Hi everybody, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur, and I hope you're doing well. I hope you're having a good week. I have a quick tag video this evening. This is a Shakespeare tag. Please note the indefinite article there. It was created by Jordan Parsons, who was kind enough to tag me when he created this weekend. And I have his video tagged below. I love his channel. I love just how authentic he is, whether he's talking about a book that he loves or one that he doesn't really appreciate. It's very wonderful to see someone who can just be so honest and transparent, about his feelings about books. Anyhow, let's jump in. Prompt 1, The Comedy of Errors. Name a debut work that is surprisingly good. And this writer has plenty of masterpieces among her later works, but I do think her debut novel is a very, very astonishingly assured work, and that is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I reread this last year, and it's almost absurd just how confident she is in her use of language and what she knows she can do with it. The sensations she's going to conjure up in her writing. It's truly amazing. Prompt 2, Love's Labour's Lost. Name a book that you find excessively wordy. Jordan's response for this was great. For me, it could be almost any of this writer's works, but I'm going to go with A Turn of the Screw by Henry James, in part because I think a lot of people were reading or rereading this work last fall when The Haunting of Bly Manor was airing on Netflix, and I couldn't bring myself to reread it. He's too wordy. Aristotle is always a close second, though, for that type of question. Prompt 3, As You Like It, possibly my favorite Shakespearean comedy. Name a book with a particularly lovable cast of characters. Well, if if you're not going to include And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, then I'm going to go with Nature Stories by Jules Renard, narrowly edging out any of P.G. Wodehouse's books. All the characters in here are animals and plants in the countryside. And Renard is just coming up with strange little vignettes to describe them and memorialize them in these charming little ways. A snail, he talks about during the rain the snail curls up in its shell, and he compares it to like a snotty nose. And it's perfect. And so this is a book I highly recommend to anybody. It even has some really fun little illustrations and stuff. This is one my daughters love when I've read it to them. Prompt 4, A Midsummer Night's Dream. Name a book that enchanted you. I really thought about going with one of the Sandman comics that Neil Gaiman wrote, maybe even the one that deals with the Midsummer Night's Dream. But I'm going to go with The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. This is a great book. It combines mystery and sort of like supernatural elements so well, but Kostova also really builds a world. And not just world, but like rooms, and then decorates the rooms. Like you feel like you're in the room with the characters as the mystery is progressing. And it's a marvelous book, and it's one that has a certain like special sentimentality for me because it's one that it was, I believe, the second book my wife and I sort of like couple read together. And it's something we do every year where we at least once we get a book. We each are reading from a copy of it at the same time. We're discussing it, and we were reading this right around the time of our first anniversary as a couple dating, and so we were reading it on a little road trip. We were taking up in northern Arizona and doing hiking, and just constantly being able to talk about it. While driving, while hiking, that made such an immersive reading experience for us, and so I love that book. Prompt 5. These are Jordan's prompts, not Jack's. Okay, I'm just the messenger here. Hamlet. Name a book that you think is overrated. Not Hamlet. However, I will say that I don't understand the adulation for William Wordsworth's The Prelude. I not only prefer Coleridge, but I find The Prelude very difficult to get into and like access as a reader. So, prompt 6, Troilus and Cressida. Name a book that defies categorization. And I'm going to go with this one mainly because this was actually a conversation I was having with Una from the Codex Cantina just this week. And that is going to be Cain by Jean Toomer. It's from 1923. I'm going to call it a brilliant modernist novel. It is modernist. It is somewhat avant-garde and experimental. It includes poems that are really like transcriptions of songs. I have it in the brilliant Library of America Harlem Renaissance two-volume set in the 1920s book, and the cover is just like absolutely gorgeous. But Gene Toomer's book, I just called it a novel, but Una was asking, well, I've seen it as like a short story cycle. Some people regard it as like a pastiche of many different types of writing. And it really is, it's wonderful, but I think a lot of people just question. I find that it's a novel because I think it has more unity, even than Winesburg, Ohio by Sherwood Anderson, which I really regard as like a novel of a bunch of episodes, not necessarily a collection of short stories, but that's the category I choose. Prompt 7, King Lear, name a book that made you re-examine your life. I think many books do that. I have a tendency to kind of try to process books as I read them, even crime novels. But, you know, if I'm not going to say the Bible, maybe, I don't know that there's a book, but I would say National Geographic. Especially, I spent many hours reading the articles and essays, looking at the photos and the maps in National Geographic in my formative years. And that really had me sort of re-examining just how to view the world, how to view humanity as a whole. And our interactions with everything here on Earth. Prompt 8, Macbeth. Name a book that is brief but intense. A poor player, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Well, this book does not signify nothing. I'm going to go with Who Goes There. It's a novella by John W. Campbell Jr. It's amazing. It's science fiction horror. It's set in Antarctica. It's the base for the John Carpenter film The Thing, if you've seen that. And it's marvelous. It starts very strong, and it never lets up all the way through. And it sustains both this level of wonder, that level of wonder that can exist in science fiction, along with the level of like deep fear and horror, just the going down both those streets at the same time for the length of that novella. It's wonderful. I have it in the Science Fiction Hall of Fame, Volume 2A, marvelous paperback. Highly recommend. Everything in here is amazing. Vintage Season is one of the others. Prompt 9, Coriolanus, name a literary character and or historical person that you both love and hate. I don't even really love Coriolanus. I think he's a patrician jerk. But in terms of historical persons as literary characters, I'm going to go with Samuel Johnson and James Boswell in their own writings and in Boswell's writings about Johnson. They can be entertaining. They can be very funny or witty. They can also be totally reprehensible and reprobates. In particular, Boswell, with some of the things that he records in his journals, where he's memorializing these aspects of himself, and it's very different from the way that like Jean-Jacques Rousseau gleefully, confesses everything in the Confessions, or Saint Augustine with his, with the fruit that he stole, that he wasn't even hungry for. Boswell records some really, really horrible things. And he knows that he's doing it. It's not that he's like writing these diaries that he doesn't think are going to be published. He's doing this and like sending it to people to read. So it's astonishing. In terms of a literary character, I'm going to go with Aeneas in Virgil's Aeneid. I have the Stanley Lombardo translation here. And by the end of the Aeneid, I'm convinced that Virgil wants us to read the Aeneid, and by the end of it, get to looking at Aeneas and going like, this guy's terrible. He's awful. And he, of course, is supposed to represent the birth of this infant empire Augustus has created, in the Pax Romana. And Virgil, right from the outset, is saying, like, question everything. This is a disaster. This empire is going to be bad. It's founded on this guy, Aeneas, and he's terrible. So Aeneas is a bad guy. And so much more complex in my reading than Achilles, for example, in the Iliad. Prompt 10, The Winter's Tale. Name a book that comforts you. And this isn't a book so much as a single work, and really almost like just a sentence, but it's the Serenity Prayer by Reinhold Niebuhr. One of those, you've probably heard it somewhere. This is distinct from the famous Jesus Prayer. This is the Serenity Prayer. God give us grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, courage to change the things that should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other. And that is a wisdom I'm constantly, reflecting on and trying to figure out whatever power or control or influence I have to try and affect change where it needs to happen in my life, around me, and doing it quickly and promptly, not just at the last moment when begrudgingly. That's something I'm constantly looking for. So I'll go with that. In terms of tagging people, this is a great tag. I would really love to see everybody doing this. I'm going to tag a few people specifically. I'm going to tag Summer at Cozy Reading with Quaker Cats because I haven't tagged her in at least a couple of videos, I don't think. I will tag Noah at Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse. I think he might have some interesting responses on this. I'll tag Lucas at Bits of Lit. And I'm gonna tag back Alan over at Big Hard Books and Classics because he got me recently. So this was a Shakespeare Tag. I hope everybody has a great week, a safe week to close out. Thank you.